let's roll right into it. So I want to start with a little bit of context. I want them to know where you're coming from. So if you could share the path that led you to Belay.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. Hey, my name's Kyle Willis, VP of, sorry, you don't need me to introduce myself. You said that you're doing that. Awesome.
I got you.
Hey,
You're good.
So my background came from working with a company called StoryBrand. We actually had a partnership with Belay back in the day. We at StoryBrand, we had a marketing framework, worked with tens of thousands of small business owners on their marketing, on their messaging. I have a heart for small business owners. So this is where I first got introduced to Belay and wanted to come over and actually work directly with Belay to continue to serve those small business owners. I've been a part of a founder and startup myself and know what it's like to wear an endless amount of hats, to be playing all the instruments in the band. And so love the opportunity to be with Belay, to support those business owners, to support those leaders, coming alongside them, helping take off the tasks that they do not need to be spending time on so that they can get back to those superpowers of what they can do in running their businesses, running their restaurants, whatever that may be, and really just concentrating on only the work that they can do.
So I want to start with kind of trying to thread those two experiences together. So for those that don't know, what is Belay?
Belay is a remote fractional staffing organization. So we are working with leaders from all different industries, all different organizations, and we are coming alongside them to provide assistant solutions in the form of an executive assistant. So think of this like, you might have heard the term virtual assistant, but it is a human-centered product that is coming alongside them, taking off the administrative task from their plate. Think email, inbox, scheduling, travel, personal assistant, all of those different things that they can jump in and do. And then we also have a whole other side of the house on the financial solutions. So think if you need help with payroll, bookkeeping, all of that type of things. But Belay was really built on the virtual assistant, that administrative support that comes alongside you.
And so you're working for Donald over at StoryBrand. You're probably really happy over there. I know he runs a great ship. What are the parallels between the two brands? Why do you think you were a good fit there, and what makes you a good fit here?
Yeah, it's amazing how much crossover there is on that end user of both of those products. And like I said, I mentioned earlier, having a heart for that small business owner, being one of those myself for a season as well. I think that is the biggest crossover. And you've got these high capacity, high powered leaders that are trying to do everything. So at StoryBrand, they're running the business. They're the founder salesperson. They're also trying to do all of the marketing, but they're probably not really a marketing person. That's where I think StoryBrand really came in and helped plug the hole. Over at Belay, it's the same type thing, right? You've got a founder that might have created an incredible product, or maybe they're just amazing at sales and that's their hip pocket skill, and they can go out and build some unbelievable partnerships and channel partnership opportunities, all of that. However, they're also getting stuck in the mud of trying to respond to every single email, trying to be the first line of defense for every customer experience, all the different things that ends up really just bogging them down and not allowing them to focus on what they do. And I think that's where Belay can really step in and help out too, is to plug some of those holes so that you can get back to doing the work that only you can do.
What I think I struggled with in the earliest days before I would argue decent at delegation was like understanding that like overwhelm is the hurdle, right? I am so overwhelmed that I don't even know where to start and what I would delegate or how I would even train someone else to do it. And so I would assume that one of the things you've seen over and over again is that the hurdle isn't this validation in, no, I'm good, I don't need help. I'm sure we could all use more help. It's in how to galvanize the help. So like, how do you approach figuring out like what's the lowest hanging fruit? How should people engage with an executive assistant, and especially for independent restaurants in what is like a non-traditional format, right?
Yeah, I love that. Well, the fact that you were decent at delegation and coming from the restaurant industry is far better than most that I see for those. So props to you for that. However, taking a look at, what should you delegate, right? These are those items that I really want to challenge everybody to. And I always say, hey, let's start making a list. Make a list of those daily activities, those weekly activities that you are doing on a very consistent basis, right? That might be something with calendar and scheduling. It might be something with payroll, hiring coordination, your email inbox, all of those different items. And let's make a full list of those things that you're doing. Now, we can go back and also make a list of what are some areas, the whole other side of that coin, what are some areas that where you should be spending your time that you're not. And within all of those, you can also start to circle things that are like, hey, I'm doing this every week, doing this every day, and I also hate doing this. But I'm doing it just because I'm taking on that owner mentality, and which is what so many people do of, well, it's just my job. It's just my role. I need to be doing all these things. I would argue that that's not actually the case, right? There's a lot of these individual things that are happening that 100% you can pass off to someone else on your team. And if you have that person on your team that you can pass that off to, great, go for it. But a lot of people, they get stuck because they're like, I don't know who to pass it to, or I don't even have anyone else to pass it to. Or if I do, they're so overwhelmed, they're at capacity. And now you're running into kind of the same issue across the board, which I would say growth always stalls at capacity. So you have to find a way to start buying back some of your time, or buying back some of the time for your general manager or those next leaders that you have, so that now, you all can kind of stay in your lanes and start getting back to what you're doing so that you can grow.
What does effective delegation look like? I can tell you that for me personally, I think the biggest paradigm shift was, I would earmark someone that I thought would do a great job with this thing. I would delegate to them. They would screw it up. I would then go back, fix their screw up, take it all back onto myself. And so rarely did I blame the person. I almost always blamed delegation, right? And said, "Oh, well, delegation just isn't for me." Um, how do you effectively delegate? Is there a proven process?
I think delegation is a true partnership. So you as the owner, as the leader, also you've got to have some skin in the game on the front end to really be someone that is going to bring that assistant into your world, into your everyday world. That's your professional world. That's parts of your personal world as well. If you're asking them to be a strategic partner for you, which is what we want to provide, that's the expectations of what that person should be. They should be able to enter into your world. I think so many times people just want to be able to kind of bark out the command and think that it's just going to be done. You have to do a little bit of teaching and education, and that's where we can come alongside you and help out with that onboarding process as well. So I'm not telling you that you're all alone in that, but I am saying to have someone that wants to come alongside you and be led, you also have to be a great leader. And that does look like spending a little bit more time on the front end, helping them understand the why behind some of these menial tasks that you're doing it, why it's so important to you, the way that you want it done, and then 100% now pass off that ownership, right? And pass off, and you should then have the expectations. I have taught them how to do this. I have told them the expectations of how I want it done, how I want it communicated, the pre-post, all of that. Now you are passing off true ownership, that's where delegation really, you start to hit the ground running on delegation, because you can now fully step out. So whether that's teaching on your own, whether that's recording yourself, actually doing something that you then want your assistant to do so that that recording can live forever and they can see exactly how you do it, when you do it, all of those different things, taking the time on the front end to really teach and explain the why has long-term benefits forever.
And so let's talk about that investment on the front end. What does it typically look like? Like if I was to onboard an executive assistant, and let's just like a real life scenario, I'm working 80 to 100 hours a week. I don't want to talk to the people that I'm currently paying. And now I've brought in someone else that now I need to teach. There's so much context. It's the first time I did it, Kyle, I was inundated with questions around why do I do this thing the way that I do it? And I didn't have an answer, man, because like I did it this way. I was like half asleep. I decided that it was going to be done this way, and now it's going to be done this way. I guess my question would be, talk to me about the nature of the partnership, because I would assume that, no different than my experience, I was delegating inefficient systems to people that were then running inefficiently. And so the people that you work with, they are domain experts as it relates to doing their own jobs. So how are they able to influence the outcome to claw back more time for themselves so that they can help the operator that they're working with?
Love that. Well, let me answer it a couple different ways. So first of all, I would break off the onboarding into a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And we're not going to leave you alone on this. You get your assistant. You also get an account manager from Belay that's going to kind of help walk alongside you. I would say we are also going to come in. We're not experts in your business. We're not experts in running your restaurant. We are experts in delegation. So I think, and you've got an assistant that's coming alongside that is what they do for a career. So 100%, you are the leader, and you are going to direct and drive how you want your assistant to do work. However, I would suggest, Josh, to have open hands, because this person's going to come in. They've worked with other leaders. They've worked potentially with other restaurant leaders as well. They're going to have some really good ideas themselves to kind of challenge you in a healthy way, to say, hey, I know you've always done it this way. I'm going to do it the way that you're telling me to do it first. However, now that I've gotten my hands in here, and I've got some pretty good ideas of how we can make this better. And I think great leaders are open to that and hearing that. And I think that's something that, if you go with a professional service to really help you out with the assistant, yes, you should count on getting hours back 100%. You might also find that you're walking out of there with all of your processes getting a little bit better, because you've got someone who is an expert in that field. You've also got someone that's what drives them. That's what fuels them. So some of that work that you circled earlier and you said, I hate this, or this drains me, an administrative assistant who that's what they want to build their career around is coming in and saying, I love this work. I actually want to take this work to the next level. And that's where I think, when we talk about a strategic partnership, it starts to work really well, because you see this other person lighting up about a process that might be at a C level, and they're saying, hey, I got some pretty good ideas to take this to an A level. So in that first 30 days, we are going to walk alongside you heavily, right? We're going to set goals, priorities, help to uncover those different items that you're thinking about. Okay, I have a pretty good idea of, here's the first 5 things I know I want to delegate, right? If you're coming to us and you're kind of bursting through the ceiling, you know that you've got some low hanging fruit. However, there's a whole nother, next 5 to 10 things that you might not even be thinking about delegating, that we can help pull to the surface and help you understand what those things are, and then start to dive into some of those things. And that's, so it will require a two-way street in those first 30 days. But I always say, hey, at the end of those first 30 days, you should start feeling relief, right? You should start feeling, okay, some of these things are being taken off of my plate. At the end of that 60 to 90 days, you're going from flat foot. So you might feel a little bit on your back foot in the first 30 days. We're going flat footed at day 30, starting to feel, okay, I can see it coming. That day 30 to 90, we're on our front foot, and you're saying, wow, okay, I just got, the 5 hours back per week, or I just offloaded 3 tasks that now this executive assistant is owning for me, right? And they're coming to me if they run into a hurdle or get blocked or whatever else. However, I'm feeling that true relief, and all that happens pretty quickly, right? And by that first 90 days, you're feeling in a really great spot.
Here were some of the unexpected outcomes for me personally. One, like, you learn by teaching. So I understood by the time my executive assistant was fully onboarded, I had a firmer understanding of my business and how it kind of all worked together, because no one had ever asked me to articulate every facet of the business.
That's right.
And how all of these things fit together. So that was a huge paradigm shift for me. The second thing that I would share, and it was a limiting belief that was eviscerated multiple times throughout my career, is that in our industry, and I spent my entire life in it, there's this group thing. There's this limiting belief around restaurants are unicorns. They operate, under different rules than every other business on the planet. And so, like, as a result, the only things to learn are from within the industry. And then years ago, and it was actually how I was first interested or introduced to Belay, was I was in EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization. Right. And you guys do a ton of work with a ton of entrepreneurs through the organization. And what I found in my time with EO was that there was so much more to learn about the restaurant industry from every other industry than there was from my own industry. That not that I had mastered every facet of the industry, but from the inside, everything kind of looks the same. But when I took like fundamental, foundational best practices from other industries and I infused it into my own, magic happened. And so, when you talk about, these assistants might not have expertise in the restaurant industry, I would argue great, because like I already know everything there is to know about that. So now I want to know what other people are doing, because I think that will help us evolve the businesses to where they're not just like great restaurants, they're fundamentally great businesses within a great industry that's set up for success and sustainability, which I would argue in a lot of ways we're not there yet. Does that resonate with you?
It does, absolutely. And, I would say whether you get an assistant that has direct experience working in a restaurant or not, I'm going to say probably somewhere between 50 to 80% of what they're going to come in and tackle is going to be pretty industry agnostic. So if you're drowning in email inbox management, in calendar and scheduling, vendor coordination, hiring coordination, anything in your payroll, bookkeeping support, which, that goes across leaders of all different industries, then we can help, right? And then the other side of that is like what a leader is really being asked to do, whether it's restaurant or whether it's something else. You need to be first of all concentrating on growth, on whether that's within your same store, whether that's expanding to new stores. You're thinking about customer experience. You're thinking about your team culture. You're thinking about community involvement. And that's all on the professional side. These people have lives too, right? So you're thinking about, hey, how am I going to make my kids sports games when I'm working 80 to 100 hours a week? I should probably be taking care of myself mentally, physically, working out, all of those things. And your assistant can help get you the time back for that. That can also help you plan all of those things. I mean, something that people don't think about too often. One of the best things that I love that my executive assistant helps me out with is when I walk up to the soccer complex and there's 100 soccer fields out there, and I get to pull up my calendar, and I get to see what color jersey my son is wearing and what field they're on. Right? That honestly saves me so much time. It's those little things, but those are the type of things that you can delegate that people don't even think about. That is a small thing that adds up to all these 5, 10, 30-minute tasks that really make a difference in both your professional and personal life.
If I was to say the quiet part out loud, I think what scared me most was this is an industry that's built on hard work, right? And hard work mainly for hard work's sake, And so I didn't graduate at the top of my class from Cornell University, nor did I graduate from Cornell University. I came up through the ranks and became a restaurateur because I was a busboy that found financing. And the reason that I was able to find financing was because I was a best in class restaurant manager, And so I didn't really know what restaurateurs did. And so when I became a restaurateur, I spent all of my time doing the things that restaurant managers do because that's what got me there. And so there are probably people listening that say, I would love to get a bunch of stuff off my list. But then the quiet part is, then what? Then what am I going to do with my time? And I think that there is some element of guilt and fear and shame around opening yourself up to the opportunity that you could grow this business. That if you weren't doing the schedule and replying to these event inquiries and checking your emails constantly, or not doing any of that, even though that stuff is really important, what would you do with your time? And so talk to me about, because I know you guys counsel on this as well, the guidance around figuring out how to fill those hours with things that are productive, that'll grow the business. You guys have playbooks dedicated to that, do you not?
Yeah, we do. And, this is where I think a business leader and owner is really taking a bet on themselves. It can be a little scary sometimes to think, maybe one of your things is, and I understand this, it might be, hey, I walk around the restaurant every day and I pick up trash, right? Because I want to set the example for my team. I want the customer experience. For some restaurant owners, I say, hey, if that's your thing, you can keep doing that. However, if you've got 10 of those things and that becomes your day, you're stalled. Right? There's no growth opportunity there. You're doing $20 task when you're a $200 an hour type of or more type of employee, right? And so that's where we want to help you get out of that and help understand even what's possible within delegation. So if that's something that you have circled and you said that is the heart and DNA of my restaurant and what I'm going to continue to do, absolutely keep doing that. However, the other 5 things, then some of these things that we named, email inbox, scheduling travel, some of those easy tasks that actually give us life, because now all of a sudden we're checking boxes and feels good in the moment, is going to slow us down from what we're really trying to accomplish over the next 2 to 3 years or over the next 5 to 10 years, which is where as an owner, that's where our headspace needs to be, right? What does it look like to continue to grow this restaurant within the walls here? What does it look like for my culture to really run deep so that I can reduce turnover and really build a very strong culture here that then turns into the customer and client experience, that then turns into maybe it is time to go find 2 or 3 more new markets to expand. Those are the decisions that you're paid to do as the owner, that you're paying yourself to do, and that are going to have the long-term dividends that really blow the ceiling off of kind of where you are today. We say, I was working with a client, Josh recently, and he mentioned, he kind of blew my mind with this. He said, Belay is like a time machine. And I was like, hold on, you're gonna have to help me connect the dots here. What are you talking about here? He said, it took my 5 to 10 year goals and it allowed me to accomplish those in 2 to 3. Because if it was just me doing all of this, he's like, I actually believe that I would have gotten there. It would have just taken me 2, 3, 4 times the amount of time because of everything that I had on my plate that I couldn't get through. Once I divided those plates and got the help from the executive assistant that I needed, now I was focused on those larger, more strategic decisions that I really got traction on quickly, right? And then I look up all of a sudden, it's like, oh, wow, okay, it was some work to get some of that lower level task delegated. However, now I look up and it's like, yeah, I'm making the bigger decisions. I'm hiring the right people. I'm developing and training those people. That trickle down effect into his law firm is what he was working on, multiplied quickly. I also like to think that Belay can be a time machine for some people that have some long-term goals to help you accomplish those sooner, faster.
I don't know if you saw my eyes get big. The reason that they did was it was so I'm a huge believer in coaches and consultants and all of that,
Yep.
right? Like it's therapists have therapists, coaches have coaches. It's a thing.
That's right.
And so the best way I ever heard it described, and it's to your point, is like everyone that you hire, right? What you are doing is you're trying to hire them to compress time. That like the way it works, especially the way it worked in my career and throughout our industry, is that like there's always this time for money proposition. And I think that the mistake that we make is we think, well, if I do it myself, I don't have to pay. We all pay. You always either pay with time or you pay with money. And the truth is, money is cheaper than time. And so what we do is we have a tendency to spend time because we think it is a less valuable resource. And then we experiment and iterate through trial and error instead of just hiring the person that has the solution to what it is that we need, right? We're trying to figure out more efficient ways to answer our emails or to get back to inbound event inquiries and all of these other things, as opposed to saying like, this is super important. Somebody should definitely do this thing, but that person probably shouldn't be me. But I think that the biggest objection, and I think it's somewhat unique to our industry, is we as a professional marketer, right? Everything is an iterative process. Like you don't have to put something perfect out there every single time. But as a restaurateur, you do. Everything you do has to be perfect, right? This is a game of inches, in details, in nuance. That's how we create perceived value. And so somebody's going to be listening to this and saying, no one can clean a fryer like I can. No one can respond to an email as well as I can respond to an email, And so for those people, what is your approach? Is it that the goal is to get these people to 120% of what you're capable of achieving? What is the benchmark as it relates to the quality of work that they're doing?
Well, I will say time is your most valuable resource and you can't get more time. However, what we're talking about today is using money to buy back your time, right? And so when we're talking about cleaning the fryer or when we're talking about writing an email that is in your voice, I also want to just help our audience understand, hey, a virtual executive assistant cannot take cleaning the fryer off of you. However, whoever does clean the fryer, it does not need to be the owner. It doesn't have to be done at 120% of how good the owner is going to clean that fryer. It might need to be done at 50 to 70% of that, and that is just good enough. But whoever that employee is that's cleaning the fryer, they might have also some level. That might be your GM. I would argue it probably shouldn't be your GM, but if it is, there's some other administrative level tasks that we could take off of that GM as well, so that now the owner's not cleaning it, the GM's cleaning it, And they have time to do it because we're taking some task off of them with some level of executive assistant support. If you're the owner, on day one, if your executive assistant's taking over your email inbox management, it's not realistic for the trust to be there for you to say, okay, we had an event inquiry come in. I want my executive assistant to 100% run with that, right? That's not possible. However, here's a real life example of what that can look like. On day one of having an assistant, you now have your assistant filtering through all the emails that you don't need to look at so that you can get to those 3 event inquiries that you do need to look at. And they are flagging those, they're prioritizing those so that now instead of spending, 2 to 4 hours throughout the day looking at your email in and out, now you've got 10-minute meeting with your executive assistant looking at the 3 emails that you need to. Now, even during this process, you can say, okay, here's our typical process of what it looks like to go through event inquiries. Here's our different tiers. Here's our pricing. You can provide some of those resources, some of that information so that, just like when we talked earlier, maybe potentially day 45, day 60, you're saying, okay, you're doing all the pre and post communication with this event until it gets to the point where we've negotiated, we've gone back and forth, we've got the date, we got the availability. What might have used to take you 4 to 6 hours of back and forth communication and trying to figure out, now it gets to a decision point where your executive assistant is bringing that decision to you and saying, hey, are we green, yellow, or red light in this? And you get to make a 5-minute decision on what might have used to have been a 5-hour task. That then allows you to take on, the pressure that you feel to do all of that work just to get one event. Now you're saying, hey, that was a 5-minute decision. Let's go get 5 more events this month. That to me is a real life example of how you can take all these different tasks that are happening today, have a really clear picture. And that's where it comes down to that list of what should I delegate? What should I not delegate? You might not be able to delegate the cleaning of the fryer, but you might be able to delegate that to your GM on your team, who now you're taking off the pre and post event communication of, and so now you're re-dividing time around to where everyone's focused on what their highest priority should be.
I want to talk about mistakes. So again, this is such an intimate conversation for me, Kyle, because this was the paradigm shift. This is how I was able to scale my business and scale myself in a really exciting way. I think that most owners bend over backwards trying to make sure that their line level employees and their GMs and their executive assistants and whoever else they have, these people are not making mistakes, right? Because mistakes are just not tolerated unless I make them. And that's you laugh, but it's funny. It's so interesting how when I look at my career, I did nothing but make mistakes, right? I constantly iterated, but my tolerance, my threshold for the GM to make mistakes, right? For him to learn independently on his own, or the floor manager, for her to be able to make critical decisions that may or may not work out well. I couldn't live with it. But I was so tolerant of my own mistakes because that's just the cost of doing business. And so, one of the things that I think is a hurdle to delegation is, what if this person makes a mistake? What if they do the wrong thing? What if they send the wrong email? And so what ends up happening is you become the bottleneck in your own business. Nobody is freely deciding because everything has to come through you. And yet you're the one constantly making mistakes. And so talk to me about what the free flow looks like within an organization, how the information goes back and forth, and how you teach and coach business owners to no longer be the bottlenecks in their business.
Well, mistakes are going to happen when everyone is operating at about 120%, which I believe is what that's the badge of honor that the restaurant industry is wearing, is that everyone's operating over 100%, which actually isn't possible, by the way. Just going to remind everyone, we actually have 100% capacity. That's all that we can give. So that is a true badge of honor here. However, I would say, just even as the owner, when you're operating at that level, at that capacity, mistakes are going to happen, and those are some costly mistakes. When you're working with an assistant, think of them just like one of your high capacity employees that they want. A mistake is going to happen. There are 100% some checks and balances that you can put in place. Let's take something simple like the email communication, right? There is a phase process to that, right? I'm not going to let my assistant on day 10 respond in an email in my voice and me not be a part of that at all. I am going to say, hey, I would love for you to start drafting up some emails. You can take a look through the hundreds of replies that you can filter through in my sent folder in my email inbox and start to understand how I typically respond. However, draft it up I want to get eyes on that before you press send, right? Eventually, month 3, month 6, now I've got enough trust built up with my assistant for certain levels of emails, which is the 90 to 95%. She can take it and run with it. And the trust and authority is there, but there's still the 5 to 10%. This email needs to come fully from me, right? And I need to step into that. Now, when mistakes are made, because they will be made, these assistants, they want to be coached, right? They are coming, think of what their role is. They are signing up for a career to come alongside a leader and serve. That's really the heart of what these assistants are. So if a mistake is made and no communication happens, no correction happens, one, resentment starts to build up in you as a leader. All of a sudden, you're blowing up over something that happened that actually you're really blowing up about something that happened 3 weeks ago that you didn't address. So I would say coach these assistants, right? And then the expectation is, and I'm not trying to add another fire or headache to your worlds to put out. The expectation then is that because we have really high level assistants coming alongside you that want and have the heart to serve, once you coach them, they're really, really good at taking that coaching, making the correction, and only making the mistake once. And I have found as a business leader myself, I can live with that all day, right? Mistakes are going to happen the first time. However, if I have someone that wants to know about that mistake and they immediately take that coaching and then get even better, that to me, I can live with all day. So I would say you've got to get it a capacity for yourself as the owner and leader. Same thing with the rest of your team. Like, don't only think through the lens right now of what all is on your plate. Think about your GM. Think about those next 3 to 5 key people that you have within your organization. What are they also the bottlenecks in, right? This assistant can come in and help support multiple people. Like, look at your organizational bottlenecks as a whole and think about how do I remove as many of these as possible. And you can plug someone in the middle right there to really help out with all of this. It doesn't just have to be delegation straight from your task list. It can be from your leadership team's task list.
I've over the years consulted for a bunch of B2Bs that are trying to get into the restaurant space. And they always ask me the same question. They're like, how can I get in? How can I get a bunch of attention? What is the perfect price point? And I would argue that the perfect price point, Kyle, and the way that you achieve massive awareness in our industry is you make it free. That doesn't necessarily mean that you charge nothing for it. It just means that the cost means nothing compared to the return on investment, and that you're directly able to translate that to dollars earned. And so, like, you guys, again, you have playbooks for everything, but you have playbooks for that as well. So what is the approach to delegation in a way that, like, the conversation isn't even about time? It's about, this is how you make more money. This is how you save more money.
I would also encourage the audience to think about what is that for your restaurant, right? We talked a little bit about the time machine. We talked a little bit about the 5 to 10 year goals. What is it? Are you looking to increase profitability by X% in your restaurant over the next 6 months? Are you looking to open 2 to 3 more restaurants over the next 2 to 3 years? What is that for you? And then start to do some of the math backwards as far as how much time are you actually spending on those things, right? And if you're not at capacity and you can keep going and you can do the day-to-day operations and you can keep focused and put the time and resources towards those longer term goals, I would say you're in a good spot. But if you're finding that I can't concentrate on the business plan or the conversations or meeting with the lenders or meeting with the contractors, for whoever it might be, for that next level of restaurants, then you have hit a capacity at where you are right now, and you have to find a way to get some of those items off of your list. So that is the return, right? And then you're starting to take a look at, okay, what does it cost me to have an executive assistant come alongside me and remove this work that now adds up to, you need to be thinking in hours. It adds up to 10 hours a week. It adds up to 20 hours a week. Now you can really start to do the return on that investment, and we can help you, put those numbers together so that you understand you absolutely should be breaking even at best, if not making money back on just exchanging your hourly rate for what an executive assistant's hourly rate is. However, the real return on that investment comes into play whenever you get really clear on, okay, now I've got my 10 hours back per week. I've got my 20 hours back per week. What is my focus? What is my strategy on doing, again, using those superpowers that you have to only go do the work that you can do, which it needs to be tied to expansion and growth in some capacity.
Do you guys phase it? So, we spend a lot of time talking about email as an example, right? And all of
Yeah.
those administrative tasks, which I mean, everybody gets into the restaurant industry because they're excited about administrative tasks. But, um, but like it starts there, right? And then the next phase is less about saving time and more about making money. Like, okay, the EA now has expanded capacity, and I have expanded capacity. What are the other things that you have founders using EAs for that would excite the people listening that they maybe haven't thought of in terms of how they could use this person to create more leverage?
Yeah, as you start growing too, I mean, a great way that I use my assistant is we've got all kinds of data points on our clients and customers, and that lives in reports and dashboards and all the different things. And this is where it comes back to really explaining the why of, hey, I've got this meeting coming up. I want to be able to tell a story around what our growth has looked like with this product that we launched 3 months ago, right? So kind of, take that into the restaurant industry. We've got a new menu item that I want to take a look and see, what this looks like. I love being able to that's an audio note, right? That I can send to my assistant. Now, all of a sudden, she's got the work going on in the background to put together the reporting and analytics in a way that she knows that I want to be able to view that. We've got a pitch deck that can be created based on that same thing. All of this is happening in the background. If there are meetings that need to happen with, cross departmentally for me or with other team members to help me prepare for that meeting, I've got calendar blocks on my calendar preparing for the meeting. If we need to get together and me do kind of a dry run on, that pitch or whatever that may be, then there's a 30-minute block between me and my assistant. So that to me is next level kind of strategic partner that can happen much sooner than you think. And that did take some level of education and me, again, treating my assistant like a strategic partner, helping them understand how my brain works and why this is important to the overall business or why this is important to the overall restaurant. So that now 120-second audio note, I mean, hear all the things that I just said, start all the action items that start happening in the background. It's a beautiful thing. You kind of sit back, you start seeing your calendar, you start seeing movement, tasks, all these different levels of things. So I could get more specific in that, but just to kind of give a high level example, man, it's a game changer when you get to that level.
What makes, I mean, is someone that has overseen, I mean, the hiring of like a cajillion executive assistants. What are the qualities? Like, what should we be looking for in an executive assistant to make sure that we're hiring right, that we're hiring well? What are you guys looking for?
I think all executive assistants have a high level of communication and attention to detail. Those are the top two things. Well, sorry, I'm going to add in a third thing. They want to work really hard too. And part of that is that they want to work really hard on your behalf. They love being that second person, that right hand, and seeing the success of their leader. But they get to be behind the curtains, pulling all the strings, doing the puppets, whatever analogy that you want to say right there. So those three things to me are very key. And then outside of that, Josh, it really does and this is where I think someone like Belay can really help out, because there are some levels of customization that you want, right? So, hey, it's a very specific industry, or there's a very specific software tool that you use, or you're looking for someone with a certain personality index. We do all of that work for you. We collect all of that information and have, a really big, healthy bench, so that as we get to know the owner, and yes, I would say, like we said earlier, 50 to 70 or 80% of the task and of what an executive assistant is pretty copy and paste across the board. And then we leave room for that, 20 to 30% to say, hey, we want to complement this leader really well with all of the different things: personality, professional background, tools, softwares, all of those different levels of things. So I do think that's where we want to be the experts in that. Take that off of, a business owner that may or may not be a staffing expert. Staffing can be hiring can be really, really hard, very, very time consuming. And we want to get a really qualified pool of people that we know fit the mold over the last 15 years that we've created of an executive assistant, to where now we can, remove not all the risk, remove a lot of the risk, and make this a quick and painless process for you.
I think you call out a really important point, which is that like there is no objectively great executive assistant. It's whoever's great for you based on your natural predisposition. My wife would tell you, Kyle, I'm not the best communicator. And my team would tell you I have unrealistic expectations. And you put those two things together, Kyle, and I am not a pleasure to work with most days. And so, someone that I would work with would need to have a complementary, right? Somebody, they would have to be an over communicator, right? Somebody that's not afraid to ruffle feathers, somebody that's willing to push back when they don't understand. And so one of the things that you mentioned was personality testing, which I think is just an incredibly important thing. And technology today gives us the ability to do this in a low cost, no cost way. Talk to me about like the aspects of the personality that you guys are evaluating, both on the client side and on the EA side.
Yeah, it is someone that is adaptable because to your point, you said, most leaders are, and a lot of leaders are visionary leaders, right? So they're communicating, processing out loud something in real time as they're starting to figure out what the next thing is. You need that assistant to be able to process that information, to let what information go out that needs to go out and what information to hold and take action on as the next one. So we use predictive index. And another piece that I would say to this is the video interview process of what we do. It's a two-way street, right? Like we also want an assistant that gets a viewpoint into the personality and who this business owner is, so that they can also choose to match with that person, right? So that's the type of leader that I want to go and work with. And that's all across the board, right? Not every assistant wants to work with an incredible communicator that is kind and docile. And like some are like, hey, I want a challenge. I want someone that I can tell in the video interview is going to match the challenger personality that I have on my side as well, because that's what drives me and that's what fuels me. Otherwise, I'm going to be bored, right? And so it truly is a two-way street there to find that right complement for each other, which I think that is the key word between a leader and an assistant. You are looking for that right complement so that you two can work together, collaborate when you need to, and also be able to divide and conquer so that you can multiply the work over time.
The last big paradigm shift I want to talk about is this idea that delegation diminishes guest experience. At least that was my belief. Is that when somebody reaches out to the restaurant or somebody reaches out to me, that they want to talk directly to me, that I am the only person that can solve their problems with my magical abilities. Here's what I found. What I found was it's when somebody reaches out to me, they need something. They want something from me. And like everybody has a different approach, Kyle. My approach has always been that like when my team answers my correspondence on my behalf, that they do it as themselves saying, hey, I caught this before Josh had a chance to look at it. Here's the solution. Here's the thing that you were looking for. All of my time, I thought that everybody wanted to hear from me, that they wanted me to solve their problems or they wanted me to provide them with the answer, when all they really wanted was their problem solved or their question answered. And fundamentally, foundationally, like these people can do that. So little of what we do as it relates to the restaurant business should live only in our heads. It should all be readily accessible information. Which brings me to the last point, which is this is an investment in high ROI. Like, again, like it's Belay is great, but more than anything, I'm talking about delegation here. This is an investment in a better business for tomorrow, in a deeper understanding of your business. That way that you are able to scale this thing up through other people. I want to know what it looks like when it works. So they can be restaurants, but they don't have to be. I hate to put you on the spot, but what does it look like when it works? How are businesses transformed through support?
Yeah, I would encourage everyone just to let your team rise up. Whether you're using Belay or whether you're delegating to your current team members that you have right now, your best employees, your best team members, they want to take on more, and they want to take on more responsibilities, especially if they feel like you as the owner are passing a responsibility that did live with you onto them. That to them means development. That means next opportunity. You trust me, right? So that is what they are asking for, whether they are verbally saying that or not. And then on the flip side, what I think that allows you to do is, as the owner right now, again, that there's that badge of honor that I make every decision goes through me. If you're making hundreds of decisions a day or thousands of decisions a week, do you really think you're making your best decisions? There's no way. But there are a certain percentage of those that do need to make it to you. However, it's a much lower percentage than what you were thinking or what you're taking on today. So pass off that 70 to 80% of those decisions to your next team members. They now level up. Now you've got your next leaders that you want to continue to invest in. They feel invested in and don't want to jump ship and go somewhere else because they're being given the next opportunity within your restaurant. And now you're making much better decisions for those larger decisions that you need to make, right? And that's probably what lives in that 10 to 20% of decisions that actually need to work their way through your team and get to you. And now you're making bigger, better decisions faster, hopefully, and not being burnt out or making bad decisions because you're operating at that 120% of capacity. So I think it trickles down and affects the entire team. Whenever we flip delegation on its head and don't think of it as just offloading the tasks that I don't want to do, but think of it as an investment in your own time so that you can get your own time back, and an investment in your top team members so that they get to level up and rise up to the occasion.
So let's assume somebody listening is sold on delegation, but they're scared. It's still, every time I do it, it's a little scary. What is that low stakes way for someone to dip their toe in the water of delegation that they could implement this week in their restaurants?
Write down 2 things that you want to delegate today. And again, go back to thinking about, okay, what is something that I do either every single day or every single week? And it happens like clockwork, right? And it's something that 100% you know that someone else on your team can do. Then I want you to write the person that you are going to delegate that to. So each of those tasks, pick out the person, and it should be someone that you already trust. It should be someone that you want to invest in, because that's how you're going to pitch that to them, right? You're going to go to them and say, hey, I see that you carry responsibility incredibly well. You're a valued team member. I need to get a couple things off my plate, and my mind went immediately to you. And I'd like for you to start taking this on today, tomorrow. And I'm going to take 5 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, to teach you how to do it. And then I want you to take off and run with it. And you come back to me and let me know how it's going, or if you need any level of support. We're going to touch base 1 week from whenever we go live with this, so that we can also make sure that you've got everything that you need. Make sure that if there's anything else that you need me to teach you or coach you on, and then we'll kind of hit the ground running from there. So identify what those tasks are and who you're going to delegate it to, and then go have that conversation and really make it a positive thing. Make it an investment in that person.